Welcome to another episode of The Bottom Line. I'm Aashmeeta, and today we are speaking with a woman who has an esteemed career in the legal field. Miss Elizabeth Fox-Mc-Donnough, first of all, welcome to our program.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to let our viewers know you are currently the supervising judge of the Nassau County District Court. You handle civil and criminal cases, and it has been a long time getting here. Miss McDonough, first of all, tell us a little bit about your current role, what it entails.
Well, my current role is as the supervising judge of the Nassau County District Court, where I supervise approximately 300 employees who work in the district court, as well as 26 district court judges. So my role is to ensure that the court runs efficiently, that we are very conducive to public service, and that it's a public-friendly place for people to come in, and also for the professionals who come practice there. We also, our main goal is to honor the Chief Judge of New York State, Janice DeFiore, her Excellence Initiative. So, the goal is to have efficient, fair adjudication of all cases, whether civil or criminal, in an efficient manner, so that people don't have things basically hanging over their heads for a long period of time.
Absolutely. Judge, you have one of the busiest courts in this system. Tell us, is it the size of Nassau County, or what makes your specific area so overwhelmed?
Well, in district court, which is different than other courts within Nassau County, in district court we see various different type of cases. We have criminal work that's done. So in district court we have our arraignment parts, which means any person who has been accused of a crime will go through district court. Their first appearance will be in arraignments. So basically we see all criminal arrests and criminal charges all come through district court, whether it's misdemeanor or felony. Then for the litigation portion of it, we only deal with the litigation of misdemeanor cases. However, we also have a civil component to our court, where we have civil judges. We have 3 civil parts that adjudicate civil matters with a monetary threshold, as well as the landlord-tenant court. So all landlord-tenant matters also come through district court. Additionally, we also have a various number of specialized courts that have been designed to try to kind of address certain problems within communities under the guise of that not every criminal matter is the same. So we have specialized courts. We have a domestic violence court. We have a human trafficking court. We have a court for veterans court. We also have courts dedicated to strictly driving while intoxicated cases. We also have mental health court. We have drug treatment court. So these courts, the idea behind these courts, and we also have an opioid, which is under my leadership this year, we opened an opioid court, which we're very proud of. All these courts, while they handle all criminal matters, they're designed to try to address specific problems that have been recognized that are within the community, so that it really is a way to try to help both the offender as well as the victim in many of these cases, so that they don't become repeat offenders. So basically to try to get to the root of the problem, and hopefully through the criminal system that there's a good outcome, in the sense of that underlying problems can get addressed, so that people don't end up coming back to court.
Absolutely. Judge, before this you had a long tenure with the Queens County District Attorney's Office. Tell us about that time.
Well, right out of law school, I went into the district attorney's office, and I ended up having a decade career there. I initially started out in criminal court as a young ADA, as most young ADAs do. And I was there in criminal court learning, basically handling misdemeanor matters, learning basic, the ins and outs of the court system and being a lawyer and adjudicating cases. And then after that, I went to the Special Victims Bureau for approximately 2.5 years. And there I was a prosecutor of sex crimes cases, any cases involving children, any cases involving the elderly, and domestic violence cases. So I did that work for close to 3 years, which was quite challenging and rewarding at the same time. After that, I also went to their appeals bureau because I felt like I wanted to even out my skill set as an attorney. So I did the appeals aspect of cases, which was very interesting. I argued a case in front of the New York State Court of Appeals, and I really felt that it helped me develop and become a better lawyer as a result. After time in the Appeals Bureau, I ended up being made the supervisor of the domestic violence unit, which was strictly a part that was dealing with only domestic violence cases within Queens County. And I did that for approximately 2 years. After that, that's when I left the office and went on to a career within the court system as a principal law clerk.
When the average person thinks about a domestic violence incident, they oftentimes think of it through the perspective of course, the victim, but also law enforcement. It's very rare that the prosecutorial or the legal side enters a average person's frame of mind when thinking about domestic violence. In your time at the Queens District Attorney's Office, and even now, you mentioned your courts now have a special court for domestic violence. What are some of the things that you encountered, that people should know about, that prosecutors deal with in domestic violence cases?
Well, one of the main things is when I ran the domestic violence unit, it was I guess it was approximately in 1995 when I was running the unit. Yes, it would be about 1995 when I became supervisor of that unit. And it was when it was a fairly early stage that the court system itself was recognizing that domestic violence cases going through the court are unique. They have their, the victim and the offender have a close relationship and close, many times familial and living quarter relationship. And so there was a recognition that these cases need to be dealt with differently. And it's amazing from that time to fast forward to now 2019, currently now, how far the court has come with its resources and its ability to really reach out and help the victim gain control back maybe in her life, or maybe move on, or in some cases make the current situation better. And more importantly, there's so many resources out there for the victim to get help, but also for the offender to get treatment, to go to various anger management programs, to go to drug treatment programs if the underlying violence is as a result of a drug addiction or alcohol abuse. So the court now is set up so that the case can go through and there can be monitoring of these various programs that people enter into. And hopefully, as a result of it, rather than what can happen in a traditional criminal case where, the case either goes to trial or the person takes a plea, this is really a little more ongoing, so that hopefully, as a result, a root problem has been resolved. Not necessarily that people stay together but regardless of, whether the root issue is addressed.
I think that's a very important message for folks to know, that this resource, this directive is now a part of the judicial system?
Absolutely. And any case that has a familial relationship, and there's various definitions under the criminal statute. If there's two people or partners, have a relationship, it will also go to domestic violence. There's a very liberal definition of relationships that go to domestic violence because there's no really kind of strict definition that really
Right.
could be appropriate.
Of course.
So having that in mind, when the cases go there, there really is reach out help
Right.
for the victim,
Right.
right in that situation.
I think that's a wonderful message. We're going to pause here for a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We are talking with Judge Elizabeth Fox-Mc-Donnough of the Nassau County District Court. We'll be right back after this short break. Welcome back from the break. You're watching The Bottom Line, and we are talking with Judge Elizabeth Fox-Mc-Donnough, who is the supervising judge of the Nassau County Court District. Judge, once again, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
We are learning a great deal about certain specific areas that folks may not think that there's resources provided to them within the judicial system, specifically like domestic violence cases. You have a long tenure in this field. You spent a decade working in the Queens County District Attorney's Office. There is a large track of people that go into the legal field, but not often that they end up as supervising judges. Tell us a little bit about what your kind of career path has looked like out of law school.
Well, once after I finished law school, I actually was hoping when I was in my last year of law school to work for the New York City Corporation Council. And ultimately, I did not get the job that I was looking to get, but I did get an offer of a job from the Queens County District Attorney's Office, which I did take. And within months there, I knew this was a career for me, and I truly, really enjoyed my job. And not everybody's that lucky. Sometimes you have to take a job to get the experience, and you might not be the job that you're feeling, this is where I want my career to go. But the reality is sometimes you need to have the job to just simply get a lay of the land, learn how the court system works, learn going to court, learning how to question witnesses, learning how to deal with other attorneys. It's, it is somewhat of an art form, learning how to deal with judges. So I was very fortunate because I really came to absolutely love my job. And I was also extremely fortunate that in my early days in the district attorney's office, I was, the court part that I was assigned to was presided over by Judge Mel Glass, who was very well known at the time in Queens County, but he was also, and I will never forget, he was a wonderful trainer to young attorneys, both young legal aid attorneys, young assistant district attorneys, and any attorneys who came in front of him. He always took the time to explain why he was doing what he was doing. He had a high demand for your demeanor in court, that you had knowledge of the case that you were talking about. But everything he taught me has stayed with me my entire career, and I will always be grateful for that. But through my years in the district attorney's office, you develop different skills, and the advantage of district attorney's office is there's different areas you can go to, so you don't necessarily have to stay in one particular area. So it's almost like an advantage as a young attorney to be in that type of field. However, any young attorney, the most important thing is to make the most out of your first job, get as much experience as you can, volunteer to do things, go with more seasoned attorneys, learn how they do things, try to get to court as much as possible, look at various motion papers, get as much as you can out of it. And for me, when I went to the district attorney's office, I didn't anticipate I was going to be there for 10 years, and 10 years it was.
Wow.
But at the end of that time, I knew it was time for me to move on. Like, I was ready to move on. And always in the back of my mind, I had the idea that I think someday I really do want to be a judge. And a path to that can be working as a law clerk to a judge,
Okay.
who basically the law clerk is, for lack of a better term, the judge's lawyer. Like, they will write decisions for the judge that the judge, of course, reviews, but
Right.
they do the legal research. They do, and does a lot of behind-the-scenes work for the judge. So I worked for one judge in Queens for approximately 5 years, and he was a very high litigation judge. We did very serious felony trials on a regular basis, and so that was an amazing experience. Afterwards, I had my daughter, so for a few years I was working part-time, and then I came back into the court system to work for a different judge as a law clerk, and I worked for another Queens judge for another 8 years.
Okay.
And then after that, the bug to become a judge was really, it was getting a little hard to ignore it.
Okay.
So I live in Nassau County, so I knew that if I wanted to be a judge, I really should look towards making a
Right.
career in Nassau County. And I was fortunate enough to get a position as a law clerk, a principal law clerk, to Judge Norman St. George, who was at the time the supervising judge of district court.
Okay.
So I worked for him for over 3 years, and then I had the opportunity, because one of the judges in my building was retiring, so there was going to be an opening, so I had the opportunity to run for that seat. And the dream came true. So I guess if I were to say to people, I am a firm believer in if you feel that you want something, never to be afraid of saying it out loud, what your goal is, what you think you want to do, where you want to work, what type of work you want to do. I can't tell you how many times I was told different things like, oh, you don't have enough experience in the DA's office to get into the Special Victims Bureau. But I got into the Special Victims Bureau. Like, I never let anybody, any negative feelings of other people prevent me from at least trying. Because I really, and I say to people all the time, including my own daughter, but any of my friends, my family knows me, I always say, what's the worst that can happen? They'll say no.
They'll say no, exactly.
Exactly, and it never, so it's a no. Like,
Right.
you live through a no, it's not really that of a big deal,
Absolutely.
but sometimes you get a yes.
Exactly.
And
you won't know unless you try,
and
right?
you do not know unless you try.
Judge, I have to ask, for any young professional, young lawyer breaking into this field, there's so many different paths they can follow. There is private practice and, working in the private sector. There is, of course, going into the legal system, the government legal system. And then there is, these elected seats, right? So you are an elected official, you're a public servant.
Right.
How does that compare to your time just working within the judicial system independently?
Well, I have to say that when I was elected judge, and the first day I went up on the bench, and I sat down, and I've been in the system for quite a long time, and I worked for a lot of judges, and we handled a lot of different cases, and when I sat in the seat and I looked out and I was in my robe, the enormity of the responsibility was overwhelming. Like, I truly had a sense of, this is an incredible responsibility that I have. So in that regard, I think it's so important for any public servant, and in particular in the judicial system. Most people, you are going to be the only experience they have in a court system, because most people can live their life and never be in court, and usually when you end up in court, it's not
A
for a
positive
great,
thing,
it's
yeah.
not a positive
Yeah.
thing, correct. And So you look out and everything, every decision that I make every single day, I know I'm affecting somebody's life. So with that in mind, it's so important that each single decision that I make is one that's thoughtful, is lawful, and is done with the deliberation that it deserves. So that is always my goal, and that's my goal every single day when I sit on the bench.
I think that's some sage advice for anyone in this profession looking to follow your footsteps, and you know, possibly for folks on the other side of the bench, you know, for them to know what the inner workings of a judge often are. Judge Elizabeth Fox-Mc-Donnough, we thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
And we appreciate you being candid with us on this program. Folks, this has been an exclusive interview with Judge Elizabeth Fox-Mc-Donnough, the supervising judge of Nassau County District Court. Another episode of The Bottom Line. Keep watching. We will always bring you the political topics and issues that are at the forefront of your day-to-day life. Once again, this has been a special episode of The Bottom Line. Thank you for watching.